Welcome to the Propertybuyer Podcast, where we explore the world of residential and commercial real estate to help you make better decisions about buying, selling, or investing in all types of property. Join me, Rich Harvey, CEO of propertybuyer.com.au and multi-award-winning buyer's advocate. Our podcast features expert interviews, market trends and insights, and practical tips for navigating the complex world of Australian real estate. Whether you're a home buyer, a seasoned property investor, commercial buyer, developer, or simply curious about the property market, our podcast is for you. Join us as we share our knowledge, strategies, and experience and help you achieve your property goals. Welcome to another edition of the Propertybuyer Podcast. I'm Rich Harvey. Today I'm delighted to welcome Cathy Baker, Principal and Luxury Property Specialist at Belle Property Killcare. With a deep-rooted passion for the Central Coast and a standout reputation in prestige real estate, Cathy has consistently guided premium buyers and sellers through the region's most sought-after homes. Her expertise spans architectural gems, lifestyle estates, and elevated coastal retreats, blending market insight with genuine warmth and business acumen. Cathy, it's really wonderful to have you on the show today.
Thanks for inviting me, Rich. Glad to be here.
Really looking forward to chatting. We're going to be talking about why the Central Coast is booming. I really want to hear about your thoughts about lifestyle and value and the future prospects. But Cathy, before we start on getting into all those questions, we have a little philosophical bent on our podcast, and we have a thought of the day, which I'd love to get your perspective on. And today's thought of the day is from Frank Sinatra, who said, "The best revenge is massive success." What do you take from that quote?
I love to prove others wrong and to do what people tell you can't do. And I think that is always the best revenges, rather than taking it out on other people, is just to show by doing things in a better way and show success by leading from the front and setting new benchmarks.
I think I'm interested to understand why Frank Sinatra even said that. I think he must have been put down, or maybe at school he was told he was good for nothing. You hear a lot of people who are really successful at school, like unsuccessful at school in academic terms, and they go, "I'm going to prove my teacher wrong," right?
Yeah, well, I mean, Richard Branson is a great example of that. I went over to Necker Island a few years ago, and obviously he struggled through his childhood with dyslexia and being bullied, and was a great example of how to prove other people wrong and to strive to, rise to the challenge and be successful. Fantastic. Because sometimes that drive is the thing that elevates you, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very true. Well, let's get into some questions. I want to ask you about specifically the Central Coast. But before we do that, how did you get into real estate? What was your sort of key attraction to getting into the industry?
I really had no idea about real estate at all. Apart from having bought a house, I turned 40 and I had 4 children under 8. And I was an interior designer, international interior designer. My husband had a commercial building company, and unfortunately we did a really large project for a professional crook, not realizing that the guy was who he was. And he quickly put his company into liquidation, leaving us $1 million in debt with the contractors unpaid. And so suddenly we found ourselves in a situation where we were $1 million in debt and had 4 boys in private school and both of us self-employed. So I went about taking my children out of the private school that I'd volunteered at for many years and got offered a job in real estate through doing that through somebody that had seen me run all the events for the school and asked me why I was taking my children out of school, and that opportunity opened. And I started on the front desk, and within 12 months was the regional sales agent of the year. So I adapted very quickly out of need more than anything else at that time.
Well, that's a great story, turning adversity into an advantage. Well done. I'm sure that wouldn't have been easy going through all of that difficult time, but well done. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to understand just what's going on in the property market. We're seeing obviously a lot of, every year's different, right? You've seen a lot of different changes,
Yeah.
but what's going on the Central Coast at the moment? What's the mood of the market?
Look, be I would say that the last year on the Central Coast has been the hardest year in real estate that I've ever experienced in my career.
For what reason?
It's been harder than the GFC because you saw the market come back not only in the luxury level, but all the way down to the bottom end of the market. I mean, having 4 offices and being able to, sort of look at the different market segments allows me to have a very good snapshot of, where that market is and what's happening in different areas. But, Point Claire is a classical investor and first home buyer market. And even in areas like that, properties were staying on the market for 3 months or more and, $1 million price point and not turning over in the way that they should have done. I mean, obviously that new first home buyer scheme has helped stimulate that bottom end of the market. But if you look at the Central Coast property market at the moment, say if I took a snapshot of the $3 to $4 million price point, you'd see 143 properties on the market and only 4 having sold in that price point in the last month, meaning we've got 9 months stock on the market in just that one price point. You look across, if you were to do a snapshot of the market between the $4 to $10 million bracket, then it's quite scary because everywhere from acreage to beach suburbs, there's very few buyers in that $3 to $10 million bracket, which we would normally see an abundance of at this time of year, especially in the lead up to Christmas.
What's holding them back, Cathy? I'm curious to know.
I'm curious to know too.
Okay.
Well, the holiday home buyers are still there, but they are only buying if they see a real value. It's a really price sensitive market. You can see with every auction that's happening that I think the auction clearance rates on the Central Coast are about 50% at the moment. But what you see is there's probably a $200,000 to $300,000 differentiation between where the buyers are and where the sellers are, and the time to bridge that gap is taking much longer. So, the spring stock's still on the market, the summer stock's come to market, and there seems to be an abundance of other people wanting to come to market before Christmas with 6 weeks to go, which is something we've never seen before.
This is really interesting. I've got to say, a lot of the other guests that I've interviewed are talking about an opposite situation in their market. So to me, it kind of almost smells like spells a bit of an opportunity here where there is like more stock. See, normally there's an abundance of buyers in other areas, especially around Sydney. But are you seeing a lot of people migrating out of Sydney to the Central Coast to live? And again, who are those buyers? What do they look like?
Well, certainly the North Shore. I mean, if I look at one of my recent buyers, this really sad case of selling in Gordon, a beautiful heritage house on a 2,000 square metre block with tennis courts, beautiful period home that's been there for years, appraised 12 months ago at $9 to $10 million. Ended up selling at 6.675 or something around that level, and being bought by Chinese buyers to knock it down and build apartments on it. And that seems to be a very common thread of people moving north because of that rezoning of those Gordon, Linfield sort of area homes.
I can tell you why they got $6 million, to be honest with you. We've door knocked pretty much every property in Killara, Gordon, Linfield and Roseville, and we know that there was another big group, JLL went through in the Savills, and they overpromised what people would get for their homes, and because of construction costs and DA delays, the cost of construction's been those properties are not actually worth 9 or 10 million, which they were promised. And so they're actually like fake appraisals. So unfortunately the vendors had that expectation, right? And then they feel bad at getting 6 million, which is still a fantastic price, right?
And I suppose, the good thing in their case is, that transition to the Central Coast to find something that suits them with a lifestyle that also works for them in that transition is helping them. But, it's still, hard to accept, I imagine, when you've got such a beautiful property to
that's right.
being told to be knocked down.
That's right. So tell me, Cathy, just about maybe the specific suburbs or pockets where you're seeing, strong buyer activity or good demand. Are there any particular pockets of buying you think are a good value or activity at the moment?
Well, so, your first home buyer and investor market, we're seeing an influx, again, of a lot of Chinese buyers from Chatswood into Point Clare, Cooley Wong, that side of the Central Coast, mainly because of, the proximity to one stop on the rail to the train station and 55-minute service to the CBD with just 4 stops on the train. You've got that growth pocket there because of the redevelopment of Gosford and the walking track going around. So that side of the Central Coast is very affordable still for both investments, first homes and family homes as well, and it has great amenities close by. The north end of the coast, Baddow Bay up through to Blue Bay, that pocket there is very similar, very fast-growing corridor of the Central Coast, and lots of opportunity for, good quality homes close to the beaches, etc. The acreage market has struggled a little bit in the last few months. It did well last year, but over spring and summer, it's also become a little saturated with stock. So that's, it's very price sensitive. Everything's having to be adjusted in the acreage sector of the market. And of course, the beachfronts, there's not high volume of beachfront properties available, and the same with the deep waterfront. So in some ways, they're a little bit protected because there is also always, good buyer demand for them, but there isn't a lot of statistics for them to look at as far as recent sales evidence of anything beyond that 7 to 12 million. There was a beachfront at 7, one at 12.5. So there has been a couple of isolated things. North of Oka was at 12.5, Foresters Beach at 7.1. So there's been a few, but not many, only a handful of higher end sales.
I've got very fond memories of Oka Beach. My dad used to own number 1 Cliff Drive.
That's a lovely spot.
Directly behind the surf club, and as a little boy, I'd run across the road there and get my little 20-cent bag of mixed lollies, and I learnt to swim in the pool there, and it was just great family holidays in an old beach shack, but unfortunately my dad sold it way too early, and but obviously you've been seeing 4 or 5, and as you say, $7 million beachfront properties now, but is that sort of pocket still? I mean, it's a real enclave, isn't it? That Avoca Beach, Terrigal, and even up to Womberal now, we're seeing some pretty good prices up there, aren't we?
Yeah, well, there was an older beachfront in Avoca that sold for 15 million on the beach on a big block. But yeah, they're always high demand suburbs, and there's always a lot of both holiday home buyers and permanent home buyers that are attracted to those suburbs. Due to what they have to offer, and so the same with a lot of the other smaller beach suburbs, which attract a lot of people that prefer that more isolated location.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about how the Central Coast has evolved in terms of lifestyle, infrastructure, and sort of amenity value. Like, it used to be seen, and there's probably a bit of a stigma about the Central Coast, that it was like cheap and it's not necessarily a desirable demographic, but there's obviously some fantastic areas to live. It's great for lifestyle. Tell me how you've seen it evolve yourself.
Look, well, it certainly has gentrified in the last 5 years particularly, and I think that, like you say, we used to get a lot of Sydney buyers up here that would sort of refer to it to be in the poor relation to the northern beaches. But I think if you look at a lot of the buyers that we see these days, that a lot of them actually prefer the Central Coast to some of those areas like the northern beaches, like Palm Beach, because they're not as busy. The transportation with the fast train and everything is much better to get into the city. With the North Connects, that travel time through on the freeway has improved out of sight, and And now we feel like we're the upper North Shore, really, because
Nice.
we really are the extension to Sydney, and the viability of having a weekender that you can be at within an hour and 15 minutes of Sydney, which you can use every weekend, as opposed to being down the south coast or further north, makes it that, I think people after COVID really did value lifestyle and time with family, and they started to reorganize their lives so they could have a work from home day on a Friday or a Monday and be able to capitalize on, spending half their week in their holiday home, or being able to move further out of the city because they had that flexibility. And even though a lot of people have gone back to working in offices, we've seen definitely that shift in lifestyle of the way people live and work from home, and, transition between living in the city to living in a coastal lifestyle.
Yeah, excellent. And tell me a bit about what I call the northern part of the Central Coast. Like, I'm talking sort of from Baddo Bay north, all around Tuggerah Lake. You got the entrance, Berkeley Vale, and then further north, top of that, you got Gorican, Toukley, Noraville, up to Budgewoi. How have those areas performed, do you think?
Look, like I say, they are one of the fastest growth corridors of the Central Coast, and the infrastructure and facilities, hospitals, and university at Arimba, and various other things that make those areas very attractive. And they sort of bridge the middle between Newcastle really well, where a lot of people are, sort of going that way for work or for uni or, other things. And they seem to be very good value suburbs for that investment property as well. So you can, certainly get some very good buys at that north end of the coast, and very affordable suburbs for people transitioning, and also being close to the freeway for commuting.
Yeah, we've seen Newcastle. We buy quite a bit in the Newcastle region and the Central Coast region for our clients, but we've seen the Newcastle prices really accelerate. And so getting further south, you've got Lake Macquarie. But as you say, that sort of northern part, just before the Lake Macquarie area, that northern part of the Central Coast is still very affordable, isn't it? So it's a really interesting part for investors to look at. I just want to ask you a little about, prestige and lifestyle drivers, if I may, and love to understand what really defines a prestige property on the Central Coast today, and how has that definition shifted over the past decade?
Yeah, look, it's a really changing landscape. I think that, if you look across the Central Coast at some of the new developments and builds that are happening in that prestige market, it's that there is, so much high quality building going on, and, $6 or $7 million builds and spends that the people are investing so heavily into using high caliber architects that setting a new standard of architecture in the area, and new quality builds. I mean, if just one suburb, if you looked at Killcare as an example of it, if I could go down one street and I could say that there is probably 10 $6 or $7 million builds in one street coming down Manlyville Road, that have been built in the last 2 years. So, and mainly they are holiday homes, but the quality of homes that are now being seen on the Central Coast just really reflects, I think, how valuable people do see this area, not only for permanent living, but also for holidays. The expats from overseas have been a big part of that. Singapore, Hong Kong particularly, but also you've had that lifestyle property from the eastern suburbs and the lower North Shore that have really thought about the transition for retirement to building something more substantial than just your standard holiday home, because their intention is to downsize in Sydney and move here permanently, which never happened back when I started my career. It was always that they'd stay in Sydney and just have the shack of a weekender to enjoy. But
their standards have risen a lot from that, haven't they? Yeah. You actually just remind me. I remember being a poor uni student 35 years ago, and my mates and I, we'd go up to Killcare, even to Pretty Beach, and we'd camp just behind the dunes there, or even camp in the campgrounds, and eat 2-minute noodles. But I think I perceive the reason is it's such a beautiful little enclave. It's like out of the way. It's a beautiful, pristine pocket. And I think a lot of those buyers understand that's more than a getaway. Like mentally, they can get into their home, live in luxury for the weekend, and just enjoy that. It's a real reset. Would you agree that that's sort of a reason?
I think once people have had a taste of the lifestyle here, they sort of yearn to have more and more of it. And I can see how a lot of people that bought holiday homes in COVID, which they did in abundance, then got the taste of it and thought, oh, well, actually, we would actually prefer to, transition and move to the Central Coast more permanently because we've enjoyed ourselves so much. So we've seen a lot of change, like our local schools in many areas of increased numbers drastically in the last 3 years because of the amount of people moving from the northern beaches to the Central Coast, where we've got an influx of young families that have shifted across the water, which was an affordability, but also lifestyle that people value. And the same, like I said, with the holiday clientele, it seems as though it has become a very sought after area, and the holiday rental returns here are actually more lucrative in many places than they are on the northern beaches. So, it's quite viable from an investment point of view. If you were utilising the property and complementing it with holiday rental income, then in many cases people are, returning $150,000 to $200,000 a year in holiday income to enjoy, as well as enjoying the properties. So, there's.
Yeah, we've seen it. I've seen a lot of, like you say, I've heard of a lot of buyers from Sydney sort of had that sort of dream of coastal living and had the holiday fantasy, and then turned that into a genuine long-term sea change. But tell me, what are the elements that the prestige buyers most want? Is it the water view, the privacy, the land size, the design, all of the above? What other features? What do they desire? We appreciate you tuning in to the Property Buyer Podcast, and I hope that you're finding our expert interviews helpful. So that we can keep providing this information and growing our audience, we rely on word-of-mouth recommendations. If you found this information useful, could I please ask you to share this podcast with your friends, family and colleagues, and ask them to subscribe to the Property Buyer Podcast. It would be a big help, and we'd be very grateful for your support. Thanks once again for sharing the links. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
I think there's obviously a combination, whether they go for the tree change or the sea change, but I would say the largest percentage is proximity to the beach or to the water. So it's either a combination of them wanting to have a boat and be close on a waterfront or close to the bay, being walking distance from a beach and having that beach lifestyle, or in the case of the acreage, being in a tree change where they've got privacy and serenity and just being away from the suburban lifestyle that they've been used to.
Interesting. Tell me about maybe a story, if you're happy to share with our listeners, Cathy, just about like the most impressive home you've ever sold or you've ever seen. Tell me a bit about it. What features did it have? What price did you sell it for?
Well, I still hold the Central Coast record for a sale at $16.5 million. Awesome. Down at Wagstaff at 6 Bolcara Street.
Yep.
I sold the property 3 times in 3 years, twice at 10 million and then the third time at 16.5. Wow. And it set the record for the coast. It was probably my most interesting sale because of the different personality types that I dealt with and different style of clienteles, a lot of them with obviously confidentiality agreements around them, yes. But also just, seeing the change in the landscape over those 3 different sales and the different way things played out in the same property in 3 different scenarios, which was really good. I used an influencer in one of the campaigns. I had Elise Knowles, who was paid to come and work the advertising campaign with us, which was really successful, and I loved working with her. And in one case, I was appointed by the liquidators to handle the sale when the Bill Pappas saga happened with the sale of that property. So there was a lot of different interesting scenarios and lots of amazing buyers.
And what was so good about the property? Was it the sort of the north facing? Was it the waterfront? What made it amazing?
A combination of the fact that it sits right on the point, looking over to Essendon and round through to Palm Beach, at 2,200 square metres of deep waterfront land with north-facing aspect, which has in a private gated estate of just 5 homes. It was, probably one of the best homes on the East Coast waterfront line of something that could have amazing architecture, but also have the best of views, position, and in a beautiful small fishing village environment. So felt completely secluded and unspoilt in so many ways, but yet had the grandeur and amazing design of Denis Rabinovich, who I think is one of the most inspiring architects in Sydney, that designed it.
Did you say it was number 8, Bulkara?
A 6.
Oh, number 6. Got it. Okay. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, really interesting spot. I mean, great location. But well done. It's a fantastic story. I just want to also just revisit the sort of the misconceptions that some people have of the Central Coast, because it's a really unusual landscape. You've got some beautiful coastal areas right on the beach. You've got a lot of national park around Booty National Park, and then you've got sort of the industrial areas around Watervale. What are the sort of common misperceptions that prestige buyers have about the Central Coast market at the moment?
I think they're really just uneducated as to the options that they have with regards to value and lifestyle. So, many of the prestige buyers will come in knowing Terrigal only or knowing a certain suburb and come in looking for a specific type of property, but have really never ventured or explored like a lot of the areas on the Central Coast where they could get the style of property they're looking for in a remarkable setting. So, often I might meet a buyer in Pearl Beach and end up showing them a property in Blue Bay. And, they're quite different specifications that they'll provide when they give us their buyer brief. Yes. But once you get the feel for what they're looking for, and sometimes you can't find what they're looking for in the location they're looking for, either because of their budget or because of the tightly held nature of the streets close to the beach, or whatever it might be. So being able to move them through the different suburbs and allow them to realise one of the good examples of that was, many years ago, I showed some clients a property at McMaster's Beach where they were looking at a knockdown and looking to pay about $8 million at the time for a knockdown on McMaster's Beach, but there was very little else available along that stretch of beachfront or even down through to Killcare. And I put them in my car and drove them across to Foresters Beach, where I had a brand new a 5-year-old house that was sitting on the beachfront there that was
already done.
Completely finished for the same price, and they were from Vaucluse, and I had never heard of Foresters Beach before. But they went for the coastal walk and explored the suburb and came back and fell in love with it, and couldn't believe that they got so much value for money in a different suburb, and being close to Wombrel and Terrigal for dinner and close to the freeway was was perfect for them, and they had that home for the last 10 years, and I've loved it. So, it's
brilliant.
just a matter of understanding the client and being able to try and find the property that matches the needs.
Excellent. I mean, Cathy, you've got a really engaging personality, so you understand what drives people. But what do you think are the key emotional drivers behind prestige buyers in this area?
Look, I think a lot of them are looking to invest into something that is going to not only show them good capital growth, but also be something of a security for their long-term retirement plans in most cases, because most of those people that are qualified in that price bracket will be somewhere in that 45 to 55-year-old age bracket. So they're looking with a long-term aim to not only enjoy a property, but be able to add value and reap the returns from it in maybe 5 or 10 years' time, or have something that they can pass down generationally to their children to be able to leave them with something that they've had special memories in, which is the case with a lot of holiday home buyers, is people like yourself that have enjoyed memories here when they were children themselves, and now want to make sure that they have that to pass on to their children.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And do you find that the sort of prestige buyers, are they difficult? Are they picky? Are they very discerning? Tell me a bit about the types of buyers you get.
I would say most of the top-end buyers are quite discreet and very private people. They don't make any fuss generally, and they're quite discreet with regards to the fact that you would know who they were or how much money they had to spend. It's quite a clever qualification process when you're working with somebody at that level, because you have to really gain their trust before they'll open up to you and really give you the full picture. So
welcome to our world as buyers agents. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. So servicing them and making them feel as comfortable as possible is, usually organising somewhere for them to have lunch and, just being prepared to take your time and not adding any pressure to, their whole experience is the key.
Yeah, it's great. And do you work with many buyers agents on the coast? Have you done many deals with buyers agents?
Yeah, I deal with a lot of buyers agents, both from Sydney and local. I do a lot with a range of different.
And do you sell many off market?
About 40%.
There you go. See, that's always an interesting statistic to sort of raise to our listeners. That's a very high percentage, particularly in that prestige sector, because every point you've made is so on point too, Cathy. We work with a lot of prestige buyers, we work with first home buyers, first time investors, but the prestige buyers, they just require a different level of servicing, as you say. They don't want to be rushed, but they want to see value. And they have particular requirements that need to be future-proofed. I really liked your point before just about, if they are going to be moving up to the coast, they're looking for retirement to add value. It's a security for their future. And they won't make a compromise on lifestyle. Like, they've worked hard all their life and they feel like they deserve it. And when you show them homes, it's really important that they feel an emotional connection with the home. And you can't manufacture that. And that's what we do. We really try to get inside the heads and the minds of our buyers and really uncover what is driving them. And we ask a lot of questions to really uncover that. And as you say, that's what builds the trust, Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
I've only got a couple more questions for you, Cathy. I hope you're enjoying this. But in terms of coastal architecture, you've mentioned there's some pretty nice kind of builds up there. Are there any particular trends in architecture you're seeing, or do you think there are some that are going to date pretty quickly?
I think just the environmental factors have had a big impact. Obviously we're surrounded by national parks, so the bushfire regulations are quite steep here. So you've seen a lot of changes in materials and designs around that. Also energy efficiency and things that, bring in more thoughtful green design concepts. You've seen a lot of change in that world. And obviously the building costs have increased rapidly over the last few years. Again, since COVID, when materials were easily accessible, the cost of building is not cheap anymore. So, you know, people sort of considering a build tend to put a lot of thought into their designs and you know, the materials. And you know, if you look at some of the properties on the beachfronts, particularly with the amount of piering and the cost with the erosion zone and things like that, they're just some incredible properties that have been built. And yeah, I'm hoping to do a series myself in next year where with an architect friend of mine, where we go walk through some of those homes and show them to the people of the Central Coast to understand, you know, how that landscape is changing, because, you know, having an interior design background myself, it's something that is fascinating.
And if someone's renovating or building something on the home, what's the one non-negotiable for the premium buyers? Is it views? Is it design? Is it land size? What's sort of the non-negotiables for them?
Views if they can afford it, and it's, you know, like it close to the beach or it's waterfront. Other than that, I think it's really aspect seems to be always key. You know, northeast facing is something that most people won't compromise on. Having some sort of outlook tends to be essential with a lot of the buyers, but I think it's really just the quality of the house. Like you'll always get a prestige buyer to pay the extra price. If something is well designed, it flows freely, and it's got that emotional connection that you know gets them as they walk through the door, and you know, the unique nature of either the design or the fact that it's got beautiful outlooks wherever you are, and that connection to the outdoors. I think that indoor-outdoor flow on the coast is an essential component for most people, because we spend so much time entertaining and living outdoors that there's got to be, if there isn't a pool or a garden or a view or something, there's got to be, you know, areas where you can have different breakout spaces, and it's, you know, really important to get those right.
Yeah, really good question. I've got one more question for you. It's just really your crystal ball sort of perspective. What's your outlook for the Central Coast over the next 1 to 2 years? Is there any particular X factors or general factors that's really going to drive growth in the future?
Yeah. Well, obviously we don't have a lot of available land left on the Central Coast, so it's seeing people becoming more creative. Obviously a lot of the rural properties have now got the rezoning to allow them to have dual occupancies. So I see that there's a lot of extended families and a lot of people for affordability looking to move in with parents onto rural properties and have two dwellings on there. Obviously the peninsular areas and places like that where people have always had the opportunity to put a granny flat to get an additional income has been a key factor. I think that you've seen the affordability is obviously a key thing, getting first home buyers into properties. They're obviously having to move further north or look in those outskirt areas to be able to get into the property market. But, you know, you can see the growth from the redevelopment in the centre of Gosford, the infrastructure with the trains, the transport, the new hospitals, the universities and everything is all driving more people to the coast, and that I see is going to continue quite rapidly over the next couple of years, and with that more infrastructure to support it, hopefully.
That's it. Well, we hope there will be. Maybe one day in the 20, 30 years' time, we will get the fast train that they've been talking about for decades. But it's all going to be a matter of feasibility. But look, Cathy, that's been a really great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, particularly into the sort of more upper end of the market, as well as the general feeling of the market. It's been a really lovely chat. Is there anything else you'd like to contribute or say today?
No, just thank you for having me. It's been a lovely afternoon. Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. I've been chatting to Cathy Baker, Principal at Belle Property Killcare. With us on another Property Buyer podcast. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please click on the SpeakPipe link and we'll answer this during the next episode. If you're looking to buy a residential or commercial property in the near future and would like to get the added advantage of having a buyer's advocate on your side, then please reach out to my team today and send us your inquiry and we'd be delighted to help. Please visit our website at propertybuyer.com.au where you can stay updated with all my latest market updates, weekly blogs and live suburb profiles to help you make better property decisions. We look forward to connecting with you again on the next Property Buyer podcast.